In the year 1982, Robert Monroe lay completely isolated inside a sensory laboratory at the Monroe Institute. It was 2:32 a.m. During a standard separation protocol, Monroe was intercepted by a non-physical guide. The entity offered a detour, a glimpse of a larger plan still centuries from fruition. In 1982, travel through the non-physical required navigating M-band noise, the dense planetary static of human fear and survival instinct that had accumulated for millennia. This oscilloscope monitors that frequency. Arriving at a future Earth, Monroe checked the equipment and found the planetary static had vanished. The graticule showed a perfectly flat, silent line. The M-band carried zero noise, leaving only an orderly global communication network. This future Earth was defined by a specific state of order, the permanent removal of chaos. Descending over Japan at Mach 2, Monroe surveyed a landscape where cities, roads, and factories had vanished. In their place were enormous, cultivated fields of flowers stretching toward Mount Fuji. Crossing into China, he observed that the vast agricultural zones and rice paddies had been repurposed. These water-filled terraces now served as passive ecological sanctuaries for wading birds. In the Middle East, the landscape was equally unrecognizable. The massive 1982 infrastructure of the oil industry, the storage tanks, rigs, and pipelines, had been replaced by quiet clusters of trees. Carrying tremendous momentum, his non-physical form raced directly toward a snow-covered mountain ridge. He passed through the solid rock face without harm, emerging on the other side of the Asian continent. Settling into North America, he arrived at a familiar hillside. The highway that once ran through this valley was gone, replaced by a stretch of open water the locals called Virginia Bay. Humanity had systematically dismantled its industrial history, returning the entire planet to a state of ecological completeness. On the Virginia Knoll, Monroe discovered physical human forms stored in groups beneath the oak trees. These forms were maintained through a hibernation protocol. As seen here, each body was sealed inside an energy shield, tight enough to block out all biological threats, including viruses. These bodies were no longer personal property. They functioned as shared vessels, available to be occupied by any consciousness that required a physical form. Maintenance of these forms required no physical consumption. Each body sustained itself by drawing ambient energy directly from the atmosphere. Though consumption was unnecessary for survival, the inhabitants could spontaneously reshape matter for pleasure, turning a handful of red clay into a steaming hot ear of sweet corn. The realization that these bodies were not owned, but merely borrowed vessels, unsettled him. Any stored form could be occupied on demand. This flowchart illustrates the protocol of the dorm. Newcomers to Earth now complete a single lifetime and return here directly, ending the ancient repeating cycle of human reincarnation. To demonstrate this new experience of life, Monroe sampled various consciousness points. The first placed him inside a fish, experiencing the precise, synchronized instinct of movement within a school. The second placed him inside an oak leaf. He experienced the effortless exchange of energy, breathing as a connected part of the entire tree, rather than an isolated unit. He then occupied an apex predator. Moving as a black panther, he felt an overwhelming clarity of senses and the physical exhilaration of a full sprint through the forest. The final sample placed him inside a condor. He tested the glide ratio and stall points of the avian form, riding thermals with a precision no human pilot could replicate. Without the burden of survival or repeat lifetimes, these inhabitants utilized biological existence strictly for gathering pure experiential data. Monroe returned to his female guide to discuss the requirements for graduating from the Earth system. As they spoke, her answers became increasingly personal. He eventually realized that the entire survey had been a calculated event. The simulation was arranged so that he would ask the specific questions she needed to hear to trigger her own graduation. Before she left, she explained that H+ beings no longer gather energy, they sow it. These seed-like particles are released into the void to establish reference points for entirely new systems. Attempting to return home, Monroe miscalculated his coordinates. He arrived back at the Virginia Knoll to find the fences and gravel roads of his 1982 research center had returned. He slipped back into his physical body in the isolation booth and checked the clock. It was 2:40 a.m. The survey of the future Earth had lasted exactly 8 minutes. The promised plan functions as an active construction project,